Chapter 25. No, I said, deciding to tell her what I could. I'm not a fallen. Then what are you? I shook my head. Something else, and I can't tell you what. Are you a Temptare? She breathed. I had heard this word before, but it had never been defined for me. What is a Temptare? She cleared her throat. The Renegades, the ones who chose not to go to Earth and get a body, still go to Earth, but they have no body, and their purpose is to tempt mankind so they lose their course and end up a fallen instead of returning to the Father. Her definition brought a painful lump to my throat. I had been a Temptare. I'm not far from it. She gestured at my arms. Hence the chains? Yes, they show my lineage. Lineage? She furrowed her brow. I can't say anything more, I said. She smiled, a surprising gesture that dispelled the tension in the room. But we can safely tell the rest of the first years that you aren't a demon from hell come to infiltrate Arcadia. A hard knot formed in my chest. I was a demon, and I was from hell, and I had come to infiltrate Arcadia. Lie. That was all I had. That is correct. So, you lied to me when you said you have baby wings you're ashamed of? I never said that, I said. You did. I agreed with you. I never lied. Oh, she nodded. You just let me believe an untruth. Yes, I said. That was what demons did. And even after thousands of years, humans fell for it. It was like they wanted to be beguiled. She picked up a book on her desk and flipped through it. We still need to think of a story. We can say maybe on Earth you were a mermaid and you brought those powers with you now. Mermaids aren't real. Yeah, but who's going to argue? Everyone will assume maybe they are and they just haven't learned about it yet. Perhaps. Why don't we just tell them I'm not a demon? Maybe it's the new trend, manipulating water. Yeah, maybe, she said slowly. That might work, since Barachiel was there and he didn't boot you off Arcadia. But we at least need to face it head on. Laugh it off, so everyone knows we know what they're thinking. I wasn't sure how that would help, but Iblis was nodding her head decisively. Okay, we can just laugh this off. She still seemed awfully calm about this all. You're still okay with me? She gave me a patient look. Jez, you're quirky. There's been something odd about you since the moment we met. This isn't really a huge surprise. Her reaction was, but then I reminded myself, she couldn't remember the first life yet, and she didn't know my role on Earth or my contribution to the fallen state of mankind. I stayed in the dorm the rest of the evening, hoping the interest in my abilities would be forgotten before morning. But I couldn't hide forever. I joined Iblis as we went to creations class. True to her word, Iblis spent the whole time laughing off my ability to use water. Master Sabriel had us working with clay, trying to create beautiful pots and vessels for storing water and oil and wine. It wasn't a living creation, though she encouraged us to pour some of our heavenly souls into the effort because it would allow us to create more fully and with more beauty. I knew she didn't want my soul in it, so I didn't try that. Instead, I listened to Iblis. Can you believe people used to think the only angels who could manipulate water were from hell? She laughed loudly and shot a glance my direction. Right, Jess? I attempted a smile, though the skin on my face didn't want to bend. Right. I mean, the very idea of Jez as a demon? Iblis looked around at our dorm mates. It's ludicrous. Ludicrous, Jeremiel said, taking up her cry. She cast him a grateful smile. But it's unheard of, Dara said, sounding uneasy. How can she do it? Just because we've never seen it doesn't mean it's unheard of, Iblis said, shaking her head at Dara like this should be obvious. Clearly she's gifted. She did control two different elements out there, Leek said. Some of the stiffness eased out of my shoulders, and I concentrated on my hands as they molded the clay into an egg-shaped mass. I didn't want to appear too desperate, but they were coming around, convincing themselves that I could not be the enemy.
I've never seen an angel do that,
Grigori, another second year, said.
But I've only been here 2 years. I'm sure someone has seen it.
Exactly, Iblis said, pouncing on that admission. Just because we haven't seen it before doesn't mean it's impossible.
It kind of ups her cool factor,
Israfil said.
Arella huffed. Like she needed any help with that.
I lifted my eyes, focusing on her.
I knew about humans and their search for coolness. I never understood it and never longed for it.
I certainly didn't desire it now. At least, I hadn't until she said that. Now my cheeks flushed and I looked back to my egg clay. Why did her words feel like praise? How could I be thinking and acting like them when I'd never been human before? The conversation moved past me and I hollowed out my egg, giving up on making a vase and pretending like a bowl was my aspiration the entire time. I felt the prickle of eyes on my face and I lifted my head, only to meet Malik's penetrating gaze where he sat next to Grigori. He knew. He alone had not said a word while Iblis wove my defense. He had not spoken to me since the confrontation with Kerubiel 4 days earlier. I tried to win our staring contest, but when Malik finally broke my gaze, it didn't feel like a victory. Did you see how I actually turned my clay into a tall vase? Iblis said excitedly as we walked to the cafeteria after creations class.
My clay never made it past a hollowed-out circle,
I grumbled. What I really wanted was to thank her for sticking her neck out for me, for sticking with me. She'd been glued to my side since the incident in Synergy class, and she made it very clear to any onlookers that I was still her friend and still a part of our dorm. But I couldn't thank her with the other angels around us. Well, you can't be good at everything. Since you can manipulate 2 different elements, including one that no one's supposed to be able to, I don't think you have a leg to stand on. She was right, and her words made me giggle. Okay, I'll stop complaining. We entered the dining hall, but before we took 2 more steps, Kerubiel stepped over to us.
Jez, can you sit with me?
I turned to look at him and his dark clothing and brooding aura, not diminished by the orange tray of food in his grip. I inhaled, breathing in his darkness without meaning to. Some part of me flickered, still nourished by the dark. I don't think so, I said, withdrawing from him. I took a step backward, putting distance between him and me. He held up a hand, stopping my retreat.
I just want to talk to you.
His expression seemed nervous, vulnerable, very different from his attitude a few days ago when he'd driven Malik from me. The memory surged through me, making me angry. As if reading my mind, Kerubiel said,
No one should make you feel inferior for who you are. If anyone treats you like you are less than them, you should be angry at them. I was a catalyst, not the cause.
His words rang with truth, and my feelings shifted. My hurt at Malik's abandonment turning into anger that he couldn't even bother to tell me he despised me now. Yes, I said. I'll sit with you. Iblis cast me a long glance, but said nothing.
I'm outside.
He nodded out the doors where I had previously taken a scolding from Malik. Okay. Iblis stayed quiet until the outer door closed behind him. Then she said, Something going on with you two? I wasn't sure if you wanted to murder him or eat him. The darkness called to me, awakening my salacious appetite. He smells delicious, I admitted. TMI! Laughing, Iblis held a hand up to the side of her face. I'll catch you later. TMI? I pondered the letters while I slipped through the line and put a box of fruit on my tray. If I had ever judged Eve for consuming the fruit in the garden, I did not now. If there was one food I could eat all day, every day, it was fruit. Kerubiel stood with his back to the doors, his magnificent wings open and quivering as he looked out over the blossoming garden. Very appropriate for where my thoughts had just been. He turned at the sound of the door. Kerubiel, I said, sitting on the bench and setting my tray beside his.
Jez?
He crossed to me and sat down beside me.
I know what you are.
What do you mean? I said, going for ignorance.
I've wondered before, because you don't have wings, and because of, certain other things. But when you controlled the water in class yesterday, I knew.
A sick feeling entered the pit of my stomach, and I put down the fruit in my hands. I switched tactics, opting for Iblis's plan now. You mean the idea that I could be a demon? The idea is... Carubial bent his face to mine and kissed me. Or at least, he tried. The electric shock that jolted through us threw him across the patio and against a tree. I shrieked as the current tore through my body, ripping my skin to shreds and rebuilding it the next moment.
I can't touch you,
he said, but instead of sounding confused, he sounded triumphant, like he'd just proved something. He looked down at his hands, turning them over, and I could see the lines of blackness cracking across them. I rose to my feet, shaking my fingers as if that would discharge the raging pain. You could not touch me, I shouted, and the wind roared my fury at him, whipping his hair away from his face and tossing branches at his exposed body, which I suddenly very much wanted to hurt. I curled my fingers into claws, the image of pouncing on him and flaying his flesh flashing through my mind. But that would hurt me as well as him, and it wasn't worth it. The cafeteria door opened again, but this time it was Malik who came out, and his eyes flashed like lightning in a thunderstorm.
Get away from her,
he shouted at Carubial. I uncurled my fingers, shaking, trying to bring my thoughts back to a logical place.
Easy, Carubial said. I was just testing something. She's not a toy for you to play with.
I apparently wasn't the only one who could call up wind. An opposing force whipped past us, and Carubial's wings trembled in it. As much as I wanted to tear into Carubial, I suddenly worried Malik might do it for me. And he had no right to defend me when he wasn't even speaking to me. Malik, I said, inserting as much coldness into my voice as I could. I don't need your help.
You can go, Carubial said. She and I are capable of taking care of ourselves.
Malik turned to me, and so many colors flickered through his aura that I couldn't even keep up with them.
Come back inside. He's influencing you, Jez.
At least he talks to me, I said, quieter now, but keeping the coldness in my voice. Malik's eyes lowered, and then he strode back into the cafeteria. My gaze flashed to Carubial, and the anger returned. I balled my fists up.
I'm sorry,
Carubial said, holding his hands up as he approached me, warily, like he suspected my murderous thoughts.
I didn't know it would hurt you. I just wanted to see if it was true.
We are cursed, I growled, my voice sounding every bit like a demon's. We are forbidden to know the pleasure and comfort of tactile touch. I thought it was all spiritual beings, but I have learned it is only us. One more gift from heaven. I spat the words out, and fire flickered from my fingers, lancing across them and seeking a hold. I closed my fists, not about to set fire to my clothing again. Carubial's eyes danced to my hands and then back to my face.
You can manipulate fire also? What else can you do?
I could burn you, I screeched, raising my hands and pointing my palms at him. Never mind that I couldn't hurt him. I had no power over the celestial beings. Carubial didn't know that. He flinched and shielded his face.
Jez, I'm sorry. Chill, okay? I just wanted to see what would happen.
You touched me.
I kissed you.
He lowered his hands, something mischievous entering his eyes.
I figured I didn't have anything to lose. If it worked, great. If it didn't, well...
I trembled and shuddered with indignation. You used me. He studied me a long moment.
I had a reason.
He approached me again.
Are you calm enough to talk?
I don't want to talk to you, I hissed.
Come on, Jez.
He settled himself on the bench and gestured for me to return.
I won't touch you, I promise. But at least we got past the pretenses, right?
That was true. I could not even try to deny what he had witnessed. Then again, man was easily convinced he hadn't really seen what he thought he had.
I just want to know more about you,
Carubiel implored, his face innocent and earnest.
Are you a fallen?
I regarded him coolly, not returning to the bench. I'm a demon. That was easier than explaining my true parenthood. He nodded.
How did you get here? Are you in hiding?
Barachiel knows I'm here. He knows what I am.
But you have a plan, right?
Hunger flashed in his eyes.
Something more than all this stupid guardian stuff.
Why not lay it all out? I needed more recruits, and this foolish angel did not know the danger he beheld. I've been sent to gather angels for the Fallen Legion. Satan intends to infiltrate Arcadia and wage war on heaven. This time, those who fight on his side will not be punished.
And those who fight against him?
I shook my head. My anger was abating, and I regretted my loose tongue. A new rule is at hand. All shall recognize his power. His day of greatness is coming. Carubiel stared at me, enraptured.
You're beautiful when you speak that way,
he breathed. Do not come near me, I warned. I am not subject to the follies of human want and desire.
Carnal pleasures,
he smirked.
Only because you don't know what you're missing.
I hissed at him, ready to lash out again.
I want to help you,
he said.
What can I do?
Recruit them by avarice or cunning. Some will look evil in the face and gladly embrace it. Some will turn their face away from the blatant evil, but will allow a blind eye to pass over the smaller crimes. Find their weaknesses and exploit them.
Here was one who looked evil in the face and accepted it. He would be useful to the cause. You can speak of this to no one, I warned.
You know I won't betray you. That's why you told me to begin with.
Yes, the darkness pitched off him in waves, his shadow obscuring the light, even in the garden. I breathed it in, held my breath, felt how it scurried to the ends of my fingers and toes. I opened my eyes and regarded him. Had he been allowed to live into adulthood, Carubiel would have been a fallen by choice. The generator, I said, remembering I'd asked him about it months ago. Have you found it? He shook his head. Find it, and find out how we disable it.
All right. What else?
My chest tightened, and I felt nauseous. Why didn't he fight the pull toward the dark? When the time is right, I will come for you, I said. With that, I turned and entered the cafeteria. The moment the door closed behind me, Carubiel's darkness left me. I blinked against the fresh air in the cafeteria, the sense that a black cloth had just been removed from my eyes. I spotted the angels from my dorm sitting at table D, their auras of indigo and green indicating their sincerity and friendship. I see fingers wrapped around my heart, and I gritted my teeth. I would never be like them. I served a different master. Chapter 26.
Let's get this over with, shall we?
Malik dropped a book on the table in front of me with a bang. This tome was considerably thinner than the one we'd read from last time, but hopefully it wouldn't reduce my clothing to ash. I looked up at him, at his golden eyes burning with some intense emotion, and I withered before his gaze. Fine. He hadn't spoken a word to me since he'd burst out onto the patio where I was talking to Carubiel the day before. His abandonment hurt me. Somehow I thought we'd connected. He swiveled the book to me, and I began to read at the top of the page. Marley was dead. I glanced at him for affirmation, but his head was bent, studying his knees or his shoes or something, anywhere but me. I turned back to the book. To begin with, there is no to Now I was certain I was wrong because I didn't know this word. But when I looked at Malik, he still said nothing. So I kept going. Whatever, that. I continued in that manner, tripping over words and stumbling with the meanings, but he didn't interject. He let me continue along wordlessly until I turned the page.
Good.
He took the book back and closed it.
You don't need me anymore. You've mastered reading.
His hostility stung. I wanted to ignore it, but I couldn't. Why are you so angry with me? He shrugged.
I'm not.
But his every mannerism spoke otherwise. Other than interrupting an argument with Kerubiel yesterday, you've not spoken to me since we last met. My voice grew quieter. Did I do something to offend you, or is it just knowing who I am?
Why do you care?
He returned, red and black exploding from his aura. I cannot answer that. I did not want to know why I cared.
It doesn't matter. You can't change what you are. I can't expect anything more from you.
So it's back to that, I said, my defenses rising. The self-righteous, condemning angel.
And isn't it justified?
He shot back.
What have you done in your spare time to earn my respect?
My face burned. He didn't know about my visits back to Sheol. He was grasping at straws. But it was an intentional jab toward my admission in Brachial's office. What I do is none of your business. He shrugged.
Then there we are.
I thought we were supposed to be a family. Something hurt within me. Something closed my throat, made it difficult to breathe. Something was choking me.
Right,
he said.
Aren't we supposed to be transparent with each other?
He narrowed his eyes.
But you don't belong in our family. You never did.
I blinked back, the stinging in my eyes. You don't know anything about me.
I know everything about you, and I know you'd rather talk to the shadow shade than to me.
Green and red and gray spiked off his aura, vying for attention, and I wished I knew what the colors meant. You mean Kerubiel? I whispered.
Is there some other shadow shade you've confessed your name to? Someone else you're kissing?
His words lashed out like blades, slashing at me. But in that moment, he reminded me of a wounded human, giving in to anger and accusations rather than facing the hurt someone had caused him. But who? Who would cause Malik enough pain to make him angry like this? I could say nothing against his accusations about Kerubiel because each one of them was true. But I was more interested in his own pain, and not because I wanted to feed upon it, but because I wanted to take it away. Why are you so upset?
I'm not. That's what you are. That's what you're going to do.
His implications and accusations pierced my heart. I thought he was the one person who saw me differently. I guess now that you know who I am, my value has diminished. I'm not worthy of redemption after all. Something flashed across his eyes, and he took a step back. His mouth worked, but no words came out. I told you I wasn't, I said, finding the words for him. You just didn't believe me. I gathered my bag, clutching it to my chest, and hurried from the library. I escaped to my dorm room, my whole body shaking as if I'd been soaked in ice water. I opened my agenda and searched for the messenger program. A bar opened that read, 2. I concentrated as I imagined how to spell his name. B-A-R-A. I got stuck on the K sound, but luckily his name appeared in a list of options, and I filed away that the ch also made the K sound. Next, for the message. This would be harder. I have finished my studies with Malik. Something crumpled inside me when I typed his name, and I remembered when he'd showed me how to spell mine, and when he'd corrected my spelling of his. He'd believed me to be better back then. He thought I was capable of goodness. Now he knew better. I will keep practicing by myself. I knew it wasn't perfect, but Barakiel would get the message. And we were done. Malik and I could not get along, no matter how many angelic interventions we had. He made too many assumptions about me, and too many of them were true. I didn't go to the cafeteria for lunch. It was better to separate myself from my dorm mates. What did it mean that Kerubiel was a shadow shade? I stood up and faced the bookshelf in my room, tilting my head to read the titles. Iblis said she'd learned a lot from reading them. If I was going to acquire knowledge before returning to my eternal position in Sheol, now was the time to do it. I was looking for information about the shades, but the second book title caught my interest. A brief analysis of the purpose of the Temptares in the journey of man. It was that word Iblis had used. I sat down at my desk and opened the book. Forward. When the heavenly hosts accepted the plan to come to earth and learn right from wrong, they knew the choice would not always be easy. But each correct choice would bring them closer to becoming like their Heavenly Father and eventually returning to their first home, only this time with more knowledge and understanding that could be acquired in the heavenly realms alone. What no one could know, because it was an unknown variable, was what form those choices would take. With the first war ended and the dust settled, the renegades could no longer accept the greater light. A new realm was created for them to live in comfort, but they were not satisfied with this. With Hassetan's promises ringing in their ears, the renegades developed their own plan to achieve the goal of getting to Earth. They took the form of the Temptare and descended to the chosen planet, living among humans as ideas, intelligences, and spirits, ready to lead the light-led down the jaded path and join them in Sheol. Why didn't the Father prevent them from this descent? Because what Hassetan didn't know was his plan fit within the great plan of happiness. This book will highlight the ways the Temptare separate the wheat from the chaff, and how man is able to more clearly see the differences between good and evil, thanks to the lines drawn by the Temptare. I didn't like to dwell on the times I'd gone to Earth and fed off human weakness, egged it on so I could nourish myself. Those events weren't personal. I needed to eat, and human folly provided the source. But something had changed since coming here, and now I felt unsettled emotions roiling in my stomach when I remembered the humans I'd ensnared. They weren't mindless creatures to me anymore, and I wasn't sure how to undo that. My schedule dinged as a new message came through, jarring me from the words I'd stumbled through. Lunch was over, and it was time for my next class. I picked up my screen and read the message from Barakiel. Thank you for the message. I regret that you and Malik have decided to end your studies together, for there is still much he can teach you. But I respect your decision. Mind the crossroads just Bathisat, for they are in front of you. He used my full name, like I needed another reminder of who I was. An image flashed behind his message. The Uriel Armory. My next class was weaponry. My resolve hardened. It was time to steal the dagger, and nothing prevented me from doing so now. My loyalties to my dorm mates had been severed. I slipped in a little late to class. My reading had distracted me more than I expected, but I was also pleased at how well I'd been able to piece together the unfamiliar words, using both my knowledge for the language and inference to decode the writing. Master Ingram glanced at me once when I came in, her eyes dark and mistrusting. But I found a seat near a window in the back and folded my hands in my lap, the epitome of humility and servitude. She returned to speaking to the other students gathered at the wall. Now that we are into the second semester and you've learned how to fight with bows and sabers, your next step is to claim your dagger. We've used them before, and you may already know which one is yours based on the previous times we've touched them. The dagger you choose will become a part of your soul. It will understand your needs and fight for you without you having to control it. It will match your personality, whether it is used primarily as a defensive or as an offensive weapon. From where you stand, you may already feel a call. Close your eyes and listen. What the sky? It couldn't hurt. I closed my eyes. Take a deep breath. Inhale and let it out. See if there is a tug on your breath, a tug toward a dagger. A tug? I felt a distinct pull, so strong I lurched to my feet. My eyes shot open, to be sure no one had seen. Then I put my hands on the windowsill behind me and lowered myself down again. But something called me. My heart pattered in my neck, and I couldn't have been more shocked if Master Ingram had walked over to me and presented me with a weapon. There was a dagger on that wall for me. Open your eyes. If you felt a pull, move toward it. If you didn't, step forward and try again. I watched as each student stepped toward the wall. Some broke off and went to the right or left, following the call of their dagger. And my ichor thumped in my ears, possessiveness curling my fingers. What if someone selected my dagger? When you think you've found your dagger, hold your hands in front of it, palms out. You don't have to guess. The dagger will leap into your hands. I held my breath with anticipation as different angels approached the wall and held their palms out. Several of the daggers trembled in place before releasing themselves into the hands of the angels, and their cries of surprise and pleasure echoed through the armory. I had thought at this moment I would feel rage, watching instruments of destruction in the hands of the self-righteous angels. But instead, I felt the same fluttering excitement. One of those daggers was mine. What did that mean? My eyes fell on a dagger no one had approached, and even from here, I could see the flames of purple and green emblazoned on it, burning as if the dagger itself were actually alight. I could not take my eyes from it. "What if my dagger's not here?" Daniel asked. "What if it's at one of the other campuses?" Master Ingram smiled. "Those sorts of mistakes are not made here at the academy. Every student at Yishuv has a dagger in this room. Some have been here for eons, waiting for the right angel. Others were only recently created in the forgery, delivered especially for your arrival." "Who makes them?" Israfile asked, studying the sapphire blue blade in his hands. "There are angels who specialize in this, working with this material. It's not a skill we teach at the academy, but there are more opportunities for learning outside of your education here. Luckily, there is a place for every skill set." The students nodded at this information, and at least I wasn't the only one new to this. An entire angelic culture existed in Arcadia and Shamayim, and I didn't know anything about it. Forsaken existed in a sphere without purpose, seeking out a meaningless existence of longing and desire. We deserve this also, I told myself. We deserve to have beautiful things, to experience it all, to have a culture. I would get that dagger, and I would help the Forsaken take that first step to reclaiming what should have been theirs. I sat quietly and gave no indication of the dark thoughts filling my mind. "Now that you have your daggers, I would like you to become familiar with them. Let them rest in the palm of your hand. Get used to their weight. Toss them back and forth. Next class, we will practice sparring with the daggers. I'll bring in second-year students to teach you different things they've learned with their daggers. Remember, your assignment will have a mission to fulfill on Earth, and your job is to help them finish the mission. Sometimes there will be attacks on your assignment, both spiritual and mortal, and you must be able to fight them off." Attacks on humans? She gave us too much credit. We could trick and cajole and ensnare a soul, but we could not physically attack a body. Master Ingram continued to walk among the students, sharing information and demonstrating different holds on the daggers. She didn't look my way again. It was as if I wasn't there. Obviously, she did not consider me part of the class. The bell tolled outside, and Master Ingram said, "Go ahead and put your daggers away. They will be waiting for you for our next class." "When do we get to keep them on us at all times?" Israfile asked. "When you graduate from second year to third year and receive an assignment. If you don't have an assignment, there's not much purpose to having a dagger. We don't have anything to fight here in Arcadia." I knew it was not my imagination that her eyes swept toward me on my place at the windowsill, but I kept my expression neutral. Of course, if she could discern auras, she could probably read my feelings, perhaps even my mind. so I worked hard at keeping my emotions neutral as well. I did not allow myself to formulate a plan. I would have to fly by the seat of my pants for this to work. I filed out with the rest of my dorm mates, neither at the back or the front of the crowd. I did not glance behind me as we left the room. I walked with my peers to the front of the building and then out the doors. We walked together to the quad and then dispersed to different locations, some to the library, some to the gardens, some to the dorms. Only then did I turn around and head back for the armory. There were no classes in session at the moment, and I saw no signs of any teachers either. I made my way stealthily to the back of the building. I put my hand on the closed door and felt the first moment of hesitation. Was that a footstep behind me? I remained still a moment longer, listening. I risked a glance behind me and exhaled in relief when I saw nothing. The time was now. Chapter 27. I pushed on the door, surprised it wasn't locked. The armory was empty. It seemed everything was working in my favor today. I crossed the room in several quick strides, my chest heaving when I came to a stop in front of the daggers. The green and purple flame dagger fairly hummed at me. I took a step closer and watched it vibrate on the wall. It was waiting for me. I wouldn't make it wait any longer. I held my hands out toward it, palms facing forward, and without a moment's hesitation, the dagger leapt into my hands.
What are you doing?
I whipped around at the sound of a male voice, my heart skyrocketing. Jeremiel stood there, his wings closed and arched over his head. He studied me with a calculated expression on his face. "It's my dagger," I said by way of explanation.
You didn't pick one today.
This one picked me. I didn't bother to explain the politics behind why I wasn't allowed to participate.
But why are you here now? We had to leave our daggers behind after class.
I wanted to touch it. I should have been allowed during class.
That's all?
A female voice sounded in the hallway, sounding as if it were getting closer. Jeremiel's eyes shot to my hands, still clutching the dagger, and then to my face.
You better hide,
he said. Hide? My eyes cast around the armory, riddled with weapons and chairs and a series of hanging bags used for hand-to-hand combat practice, and I remembered she still hadn't taught the 5-point. I darted as fast as I could to one of the bags, mostly in shadow, and then ducked behind it. I slipped the dagger into the band of my skirt and made myself as tiny as possible where I crouched.
Hello?
Master Ingram entered the room.
Jeremiel, what are you doing in here?
You caught me.
His tone had just the right amount of chagrin and teasing in it.
I just wanted to take a look at my dagger again, and I figured since you didn't lock the door, that must be okay.
Just because a door is unlocked doesn't mean you have free access to every room on campus, Jeremiel. We do expect you to be self-governing and understand that you are not invited everywhere.
Right. Well, I wasn't so great at this self-governing thing on Earth, so you might have to cut me some slack.
His tone had become more sarcastic, and I peeked around the bag. Master Ingram did not look pleased. She crossed her arms over her chest.
Did you touch the daggers?
No, ma'am. You did say to leave them there until next time.
She didn't react to his mocking.
These daggers are dangerous. There's a reason why we don't allow them in the possession of a first or second year. So let me make it more clear to you. Unless you have been invited to enter a room, if the door is closed, don't go in.
He leaned toward her, smirking.
Got it. But you might consider locking the doors.
He whispered the last words as if revealing a secret.
You know, for those angels like me who maybe aren't so bright.
He gave a sly smile, then strolled out of the room, hands in his pockets. I stared after him in total shock. Why had he covered for me? And he was way too good at playing the rebel. When they discovered the missing dagger, the blame would be placed squarely on him. Master Ingram took a deep breath and smoothed the front of her dark pants. Her wings fluttered, and though I couldn't perceive an aura around her, I imagined she felt agitation. With a quick look around, she turned and marched from the room. She faced the room after she stepped out, scanning the corners again, as if sensing she wasn't alone. I pulled back behind the bag entirely, afraid she'd feel me out somehow. Then she closed the doors and the lights flickered out, and then there was the unmistakable click of a lock. She locked the doors. I was locked in. My heart pounded so loud, I worried the sound would draw her back. How would I get out of here? I waited in the darkness for a breathless amount of time. But even with no lights, the armory wasn't total darkness. The sun dipped down below the horizon, but I still didn't move. Eventually, the moon came out, lighting the interior of the room again. I was certain it was safe now. I rose and walked to the door, then examined the locking mechanism between the doors. I put my hand on the door, leaning closer, and the mechanism unlocked. I jumped back, surprised, and then I realized the lock was meant to keep people out, not in. I could get out. I stepped into the dark hall and closed the door behind me. Someone might notice the door wasn't locked in the morning, but the blame would not fall on me. My hand brushed against the dagger tucked safely in my waistband. Never again would I be without it. Iblis looked up from her desk where she read from one of the many thick books from the academy the moment I entered the dorm room. "Where have you been?" she asked. "I looked for you at dinner. I even asked Carubiel, and he didn't know where you were." "I was studying," I said, taking my cue from her open book. "At the library." "I messaged you." "Did you?" I pulled out my agenda, buried in my book bag. I opened it and touched the surface. The screen sprang to life, showing her message. "Where are you? Want to sit together at Shema?" Followed by another message from Carubiel. "You promised to tell me when it's time." And yet a third message, and my heart did a funny tumble when I saw the image of Malik's face. "Could we talk sometime?" I ignored the last two. Carubiel would see me soon enough, and no, I hadn't taken off yet. As for Malik, we would just argue, and I would not be able to hide what I had done from him. "I can't go to Shema," I said to Iblis. "Oh, because of—" "The whole hell stuff, yeah. And why would Carubiel know where I was?" I scowled, irritated that she thought we were connected somehow. "Well, it's obvious there's something between you." "There's not," I huffed. I took off my sweater and climbed into my bed, glad I didn't have to hide my wingless state from her anymore. But I still needed to hide the dagger. I faced the wall and pulled it from my waist, admiring it. It warmed in my hand, and a desire to protect and preserve surged through me. With this dagger, I could keep the darkness at bay. I could stop those who wished ill and harm on heavenly beings and defenseless mortals alike. But that wasn't what I would do with it. I slipped the dagger under my pillow and lay my head upon it. I wouldn't keep it on my body. It would be safe in my room. I hardly slept that night, certain an alarm would sound, ring out among the archangels and masters, warn them a dagger had been taken. But morning came with no such alarm. Breakfast turned my stomach, a mixture of nerves and guilt preventing me from consuming anything imbued with light. I expected at any moment someone would come to summon me, or a message would appear on my screen requesting my presence in the Elder Master's office. None came. Was it possible the missing dagger had been overlooked?
"You have all discovered a propensity for at least one manipulation,"
Barakiel said during our next synergy class, walking among us where we stood on the field.
"And I know you are eager to learn how to control that element. But today, I want you to start small. Sit on the grass. Feel the soft blades beneath your body. Use a small part of your energy to summon forth the tiniest particle of your element. Then play with it. Hold it in your hand. Keep it small. Nothing bigger than a marble. You may begin."
We glanced around at each other before settling into the grass. I wasn't sure of the size of a marble, so I watched those around me. No one had brought up my watering abilities since that day weeks earlier, but I wasn't about to call attention to myself again. So I focused on the air. I held my hand out to it, pulling the energy from within my core and calling the wind forward. A tiny breeze blew across my palm. I stared at it, unable to hide my wonder. Though I couldn't see the air currents, I felt the sensation flickering over my skin. A shadow fell over me, and I looked up in time to see Barakiel. He crouched in front of me.
Why are you playing with air when you could play with water?
He asked softly. My face warmed. Apparently, I had the ability to play with multiple elements.
You have a unique ability, a power. You shouldn't hide from it.
I glanced around at my classmates, absorbed in their own attempts to call forth the elements. I can manipulate 3 of them.
Fire?
I nodded. Barakiel settled back on his heels, appraising me.
Then we are lucky to have you on our side.
Can all the Forsaken master the elements as I have? I whispered, barely breathing out the words. I hoped no one could hear me.
Usually, the Renegade angels are only able to manipulate water,
Barakiel said, matching my tone.
But clearly, you are not the same as them. Don't be afraid to experiment with the other elements.
I nodded, encouraged by his words. I extended the fingers on my left hand toward the dirt, and this time I intentionally called up water from within the ground. Drops of moisture gathered at the surface of the soil, and then they floated up to my palm in tiny droplets. The water was crisp and cool to the touch, and I marveled that I could feel it. I rolled my palm over and let the water float into the air. A tiny vortex whipped about on my hand. I dipped my fingers into it, running my fingers around it. Then I envisioned it shaping into a ball of water and air. It reformed, coalescing into a ball the size of a grape. It hovered just above my hand, almost touching me, but not quite. I looked over at Iblis and was not surprised to see her manipulating the air. Several blades of grass rolling around in the air current she held in the palm of her hands. She looked up and met my eyes, and she smiled. I couldn't help returning it. I felt a surge of satisfaction at my ability to do this task as well as her, perhaps even better than many of our classmates.
Good job out there.
I looked away from Iblis's eyes as Jeremiel walked over to her. Thanks, she said, her cheeks reddening. He smiled and gripped her shoulder, then raised his eyes to me.
You too. Looks like you're doing great.
He gave me a knowing smirk, and I scowled at him. To Iblis, he might have sounded friendly and sincere, but I knew he was reminding me of our encounter in the armory. He moved away from her, closer to me. Stop watching me, I hissed.
You definitely intrigue me,
he said. Iblis was looking at us. I kept my voice calm. I didn't know why he'd covered for me when I stole the dagger, but there had to be something in it for him. What is your gift with the elements?
Fire.
Sounds like you two would make a good match, Iblis said, her voice slightly strained. Jess can do fire also.
You could do fire?
He swiveled toward me again. I didn't answer, just glared at him the best I could. He needed to go away before he let something slip.
Students, after you've done this exercise with your element, you're free to go,
Barakiel said.
If anyone has any questions or needs further practice, don't hesitate to ask.
Jeremiel turned back to Iblis.
Are you headed to lunch?
In a moment. Iblis looked at me. There's something I want to check in the library first. I could tell I was expected to follow. I didn't want to go to the library. It reminded me of Malik and our last exchange of heated words. I hadn't responded to his message, but I couldn't help looking for him any time we were in the same room, which wasn't often. I'd been skipping meals and avoiding both him and Kerubiel. Jeremiel nodded.
I'll see you when you get to the cafeteria then.
Come on. Iblis led the way without asking me if I wanted to go, which meant I didn't have a chance to object. I just trailed along behind. The empty great room echoed as we walked in. My thick-soled shoes made hollow thumps as we walked across the floor. What are you looking for in here? I asked, disgruntled at having been virtually dragged here. I just want to see if there's any precedent for an angel to do what you can do.
You mean manipulate water?
I mean, manipulate 3 of the elements.
I tilted my head back and stared up at the bookshelves that stretched so high into the ceiling I couldn't see the tops. How can you even begin to find something in here? Iblis held up her agenda.
On our tablets, of course. They tell us where every book in this library is.
And what if it's way up there? I said, nodding upward.
That's what the ladders are for.
She stepped over to one of the shelves and rolled a ladder across the floor. I had not noticed it until now. I stepped forward and put my hands on the rungs, suddenly wanting a reason to climb to the very top, and then keep going, all the way into the atmosphere, and maybe I could disappear before I committed my act of treachery.
Here we go. Angels and their powers. There's like 100 books on the topic. They're in the west wing of the library. This could take a while to locate.
Iblis started off in another direction. I have a better idea, I said, not moving.
Oh?
She turned around, one eyebrow shooting up.
What's your idea?
I remembered Barachiel and the way he encouraged me in class. I think I'll just go ask Barachiel. The angel had always been honest and forthright with me. I felt safe in assuming he would continue to be so.
Well, that takes all the fun out of it, doesn't it?
She placed her hands on her hips and pouted, then shrugged.
Just in case he doesn't know, I'm going to see what I can find here. Let me know when you're done talking to him. If lunch isn't over, we can meet up and talk about what we find out.
Okay. I turned around and walked out of the library, eager to accomplish my task now that I had set my mind to it. Just as I was about to step inside the administration building, my agenda vibrated in my bag. I pulled it out, expecting a message from Iblis. Maybe she'd found something. Instead, Barachiel's face showed next to the scrolling letters. Please come to my office. That was all it said, but the ichor in my veins ran cold. I'd been discovered. They knew about the dagger. I turned around and estimated the distance from the MAB to my dorm, my heart pounding. How quickly could I retrieve the dagger? I could open a portal straight to Sheol and be gone before they noticed. But I didn't know how to open a portal, and they would find me. I clutched my bag to me and let out a slow exhale. I'd just have to lie. Unless he searched my room, they wouldn't find the dagger on me. I stepped inside, trembling with each step. I didn't frequently see other angels coming through here, and the times I'd been in the building, there hadn't been a lot of foot traffic. My mind fleetingly went back to Malik, thinking of our trip to Barachiel's office together. I banished those thoughts from my mind. Barachiel's door was open, and I was about to step inside when I heard the hurried, rushed voice of someone speaking in anger. There is evil in her soul. I feel it every time she's around me.